Hey, this is Ryan Fowler as we continue coverage of SEC Media Days. This is our absolute honor to be able to welcome in a former coach at the Alabama Crimson Tide. Coach Curry, how are you, sir? Welcome into the game.
Well, I'm terrific. Thank you, Ryan. It's great to be with you.
And I think this is the first time that we've actually talked in person. We've talked many times on the phone, but it's good to talk a little football. And I guess this is the unofficial start of the college football season.
Well, we knew as coaches when we hit SEC Media Days, all the vacation and all the talk was over. It's time to get to work. So you're exactly right. And I'm getting hoarse now just from the number of interviews, and I'm nothing but a beat-up old relic. So it's exciting to be here to represent the Dodd Trophy, which is probably the most coveted trophy among head coaches in our country.
Yeah, I want you to spend some time talking about that. Obviously, it's a big award, and we had Nick Saban a couple of years ago that won it. But talk about maybe the goals of the award.
Well, the principles are the things that Coach Dodd stood for, and as one who played for him, his principles became my life work: integrity, scholarship, leadership. The stuff that he taught us and forced on us every day are the things that the trophy stands for. So that's why everybody wants, that's why everybody covets the award so much, I think. And I could tell, and Nick does not display a lot of emotion, but I think he was really thrilled a couple of years ago when he was the recipient. And our watch this year, watch list, is impressive, and there's a couple of familiar names: Malzahn, Muschamp, Smart. So it's exciting, and it's a fun thing to do.
Let me go back to coaching for you. Who got you in the business? How did they influence you? And talk about maybe your start from an early age.
Well, there's no question in my mind that Bobby Dodd got me in the business. He did not want to. When I went to him my senior year at Georgia Tech and told him I wanted to be a football coach, he said, "That is the dumbest idea I have ever heard in my life. You have a diploma from Georgia Tech. You need to go run an airline or something. But if you insist," and here's the message: if you insist, if you feel like you must coach football, that's a reason to do it, and that's the only reason. So he said, "I'll tell you what you do. You come back to see me in 10 years, and if you still insist on this madness, I'll help you." Well, I played 10 years in the NFL, which was a big surprise to both of us, and I walked back in his office and said, "Coach, I'm going to have to do it." So you should only coach football if you have to.
Coach, we see the wins and we see the losses, but really it's deeper than that. I watch Nick Saban get, and I'm sure it happens all over the world, but I cover Alabama every single day. I see young men that arrive at that program, and then 3 and 4 years later, I watch them mold people, and I get excited about them in the NFL, but I also get excited them post-football and the leadership that they're going to be able to display somewhere, whether it's in business, whether it's in politics. To me, that's the part that we don't focus enough on in the college game, is watching coaches mold these individuals into men and just better leaders in our country.
Well, Coach Dodd was obsessed with that, and that's exactly what happens. My wife loves football. She's a great student of football from watching all these years, the hundreds of games that we did together. And she'll watch a politician or somebody that's very selfish, and she'll say, "That guy never played football. That guy never played a team sport." The beauty of a team sport is you learn to get along with people whose skin is a different color from yours. You get along with people who have different politics. You get along with people from different parts of the country. And the very things that we're supposed to hate, according to the hate groups, we learn to love in our teammates. Otherwise, you can't have a good team. What is a good team? It's a bunch of guys that will not let each other down. So that stuff lasts the rest of your life, and yes, that's the real payoff.
All right, so let me go back to your days in Tuscaloosa. If you're sitting around and reflecting on those memories in T-Town, what is that favorite memory that you share with someone who asks you about coaching in Tuscaloosa?
My favorite memory by far is walking on the sideline with those players, those student athletes, the great, great young men. And everywhere I coached, we had special guys. But in Alabama, you never have to motivate an Alabama player. The Alabama players know why they're there. Now, class attendance, you might have to give a little extra attention to. I know Nick does. We did. but you don't have to motivate them to get after it when it's time to play on Saturday. They know that they're supposed to be champions, and there's no substitute for that.
All right, when you look at, from your perspective, what is it about Nick Saban that has allowed him to win 5 out of the last 9 championships? I mean, that's even hard to say. 5 out of the last 9 national titles have belonged to Nick Saban and the University of Alabama. What is it from your perspective that he does so well?
If I knew that, I would still be coaching football. I mean, the reason the rest of us are watching with our mouth hanging open and Nick's still doing it is because he knows something the rest of us do not know. I think the great coaches, and I'm talking now about Bobby Dodd, Vince Lombardi, Don Shula, Nick Saban, those guys have a dimension that the rest of us simply can only try to learn from. So I don't know the answer to your question, but he is definitely unique.
Well, and I think you look at it, and you help me from a perspective, you look at Muschamp, you look at Jimbo Fisher, you look at Kirby Smart, you look at Jeremy Pruitt. I'm talking about coaches in the SEC that is from the Nick Saban tree. Even though they know the process to get it done, is it difficult to simulate? Even though you know how to do it, is it kind of simplement, or it's not as simple just to implement it?
Well, a great answer, I think, to that is look at Vince Lombardi's playoff record. It's 9-1. That's unbelievable. That's impossible. Look at Don Shula's overall record, the winningest coach in the history of the NFL. Well, it's impossible to win that many games. They both have a bunch of coaches that came out of their tree, so it's obvious that there's some chemistry or magic or brilliance. Look at Eddie Robinson, what he did at Grambling. That's impossible. You can't win that more games than anybody in history. Those guys are unique creations, and I think it's a God-given gift that the rest of us can only try to learn from.
All right, so I do an Alabama football show in Tuscaloosa. I know I featured you a ton of times. We're talking with Coach Bill Curry here on Radio Row at SEC Media Days. I talk 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year. We cover nothing but Alabama football. I mean, we rarely mention any other sport but Alabama football. What is that fan base from your perspective, looking at the Alabama fans, maybe what separates them from everybody else?
Passion. Who knows why the passion occurred? A combination of reasons. Probably Coach Bryant had the most to do with it, but there were others, Frank Thomas, Wallace Wade, great coaches that came before Coach Bryant. I tried to study it really hard when I was there so that I could possibly understand it. But people who can connect with it, and Nick Saban has connected beautifully, can have a kind of passion generated that the players feel 365 days a year, and it does not exist anywhere else. To try to explain it is like trying to explain why a wonderful spring continues to gush from a certain area. You can't explain it. It's a nature thing.
All right, let me ask you, and go ahead and get you a drink, because I know you've been doing interview after interview after interview. We are talking with Coach Bill Curry. We're talking about the Dodd Trophy, which is presented by Chick-fil-A. We have a great relationship with them, the Peach Bowl here in Atlanta, and certainly Alabama's ties back there. Let me ask you, because we love to also preserve history, I want to ask you from a coaching perspective, describe Derek Thomas in your ways to help us preserve that legacy.
The reason I'm hesitating is because you can't describe Derek Thomas in a few words. It's as if he were another dimension of human being. He had a kind of flexibility, speed, acceleration, intensity that you can't teach, you can't even understand it. One night we're at LSU, very tight game. We were not favored in the game. He blocks a punt, we win the game. He wasn't even supposed to rush the punter. He was supposed to check the punter to make sure the punter kicked the ball. So I said, Derek, what are you doing? He said, well, Coach, I got there early, so I just took it off his foot. You what? You took it off his foot? I mean, it was like a miracle. And he did that kind of stuff every week. So that's why he's in the NFL Hall of Fame, and I wish we had done a better job, seriously, with his driving. because that was a major issue with him, and it ended up taking his life. And I think we could have done a better job of that.
Well, Derek's a guy that we always like to mention, and you think about, now I don't know if it's true or not, but they would say that Derek Thomas would be out with the defensive backs. You'd look out, and he'd be over there working out with the defensive backs. Well, here he'd be over with another position group because he was so athletic that he could really play a lot of different places.
Derek Thomas could have played any position on the football field, including quarterback, because I would just take the ball and say, Derek, run with it. You wouldn't have to have any plays, and nobody would have been able to tackle him. I think he could have done virtually anything physically. And he had such a gift and such a belief, and we had trouble with his class attendance at first. Eventually he graduated, but we were running him every morning at 6 o'clock, and my assistant coaches were dying because they had to get up and take him out there. So I called him in and I said, Derek, you're not even getting tired, are you? He said, no, sir, I never get tired. I kind of enjoy it. You enjoy running at 6 a.m.? Yes, sir, I do. I said, okay, we're going to cancel those and we're going to put you to bed at 8 o'clock every night. Oh, no, you can't do that, Coach. So we got his attention that way, but the guy just never got tired.
All right, final question. Nick Saban has got a dilemma here. He's got two quarterbacks. Tua Tagovailoa won the championship game in that second half with a come-from-behind victory here in Atlanta. Then you got Jalen Hurts, which has led his team to a 26-2 record, 2 national championship game appearances. When you look at that as a coaching perspective, what goes through your mind in having to pick the best guy?
A coaching dilemma is not having 2 great quarterbacks. A coaching dilemma is having no great quarterbacks. Believe me, Nick is happy to have that embarrassment of riches in those 2 great players. He'll figure it. Trust me, he'll figure it out.
Well, thank you, Coach. It's been an absolute honor to be able to feature you. We're always talking a lot of Alabama football, and many times your name gets brought up a lot here in Tuscaloosa. We appreciate your time, and our roads will connect again sometime soon.
Well, thank you, Ryan.
We'll continue with more of the game here on Tide 102.9 and 100.9, the home of Alabama Crimson Tide Sports.